It's Thursday, and no better day of the week than to fly casual with the Den of Nerds. Joshua Lucas joins me. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing pretty well, sir. Flying very casually. You know, I've always wondered how do you fly casual?
I don't know, just fly casual. That's Chewie.
Yeah, I know, right?
Chewie seems to be the. Maybe we'll find out in the Solo movie.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. What if Lando's like, I fly casual, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
It's the best Easter egg of all time.
I know, right?
Hashtag third best Star Wars film. You can't beat it. Today we're going to talk the end game for the Star Wars saga, for the Skywalker Saga, I should say, because we know the Star Wars saga is going to go into Game of Thrones territory with lots of sex and incest.
Yes, indeed.
And speaking of sex and incest, Reylo.
Yes. Some people are agree. You know, I want to know what percentage of the Reylo shippers do think that it's incest and still don't care. That's a good question. That's something I'm curious.
It's a great question. You know, the Reylo thing is so fascinating. Somebody commented on episode 81 of the podcast that I did with Brock, where we talked mostly about Reylo. And they said, I wonder if we all saw the same movie, because everyone seems to take something different away from it. And after The Last Jedi, Erin, my wife, turned to me and said, so Rey and Kylo are brother and sister. Immediately following the movie. Like, literally Rian Johnson's name had just hit the screen. Mm-hmm. And then my mom turned and said the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And then I go online, and, well, you called me, and you were like, it's Reylo. Yep. Hold on. I'm doing a Reylo video. Reylo?
Yep.
And so talk to me about Reylo. First, explain Reylo to everybody that's like, what is Reylo?
Right. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit. And first of all, shout out to all the Reylo community. They've been really kind to me and a lot of other people because, you know, it's an interesting thing. So this is what happened. I think the Vincent Vendetta videos are sort of a really, really cool way to like get yourself educated about it. But the bottom line is there was a lot of evidence that was uncovered about how this was sort of Disney's plan. The whole Rey and Kylo Ren love connection and this star-crossed lovers type story was basically the idea that they had for this new trilogy, right? And so the thing that's interesting about it is it was a group of shippers. It was a group of people that were they were shippers. They were just people that are really into having this weird couple. And as they looked more and more into it, because that's what you do when you're a shipper, you look for the evidence. You want to know that you're right. They uncovered all of this evidence. So if you want to go like hardcore in depth on it, go check out the Vincent Vendetta videos. If you want sort of like a baseline aggregation of all of that information, I have a Reylo Explained video that I dropped the day The Last Jedi came out, and it does a great job of sort of bringing together those points. But it's all over the place, man. It's in the art books. It's in different interviews that the cast gave where they're talking about possible love connection in the film. That famous interview they did on Ellen was very telling. It really kind of talks about how it's right out there in the open, but they can't really talk about it. There's all sorts of evidence from Adam Driver where he's talking about it. J.J. Abrams, in the director's commentary, is talking about how Rey and Kylo are going to have a very interesting connection and relationship moving forward. And the piece of evidence out of The Last Jedi that I found most interesting is that Rian Johnson had to basically sign all these NDAs, and he was given a position in, it's not quite the story group, but it's a similar thing where it's like I forget the way they worded it. It was like a producer of content direction or something like that. And the reason that he was signed on to do this was to figure out how they were going to shoot the scenes between Kylo Ren and Rey when they're having their Force bond moments. And so what that makes me think is two things. One, that those Force bonds were very, very important to the direction Lucasfilm was trying to go in. And two, they will probably be in episode 9, at least in some way. So that's just a little bit of backstory about what Reylo is and why it's different, in my opinion, than a lot of the other shipping that goes on with Star Wars. This is beyond that. This was their game plan, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it started off like the Reylo movement. I'll call it the Reylo movement. Started off as just your basic standard shipping, and then it took on a life of its own in a lot of ways, and has now turned into story. Like, it's actually a full-blown story. It's not just putting two names together for the sake of putting two names together
Right.
and hoping for the best. There is evidence to support Reylo that is not just that's not stretching it. Like, you're not like, whoa, look at that. Because look, Vince Vendetta's videos are fantastic, but when he does, the Snoke is Mace Windu one and whatnot, like, you're reaching. You are. Like, he's reaching for things, which is fine. Like, they're entertaining videos.
They're super entertaining.
Super entertaining. Great points to be made, and for reaching, you're like, well, but it's reaching. But Reylo, you don't even have to really reach. Now, my thing with Reylo, and I've said it this week's podcast and in the past, I never got the Reylo vibe from The Force Awakens, because when I walked into The Force Awakens, Rey was a Skywalker in my mind. She was going to be revealed as I could speak today, as possibly Luke's daughter or Han and Leia's child. Somewhere around there, she was going to be a Skywalker. So the idea of her and Kylo having any sort of love connection was never in my mindset, because of they were cousins or brother and sister. Right. So when the Reylo thing started coming out and she was not a Skywalker yet, I was a little more inclined to be on that, to understand what people were thinking and seeing more. And then, but there was still in the back of my mind, she could still easily be related. Like, and even today, she could still easily be stupidly related somehow. But I'm more understanding of the Reylo thing. And I think, and I've said this before, is you need weight to the good versus evil battle. And if you don't have the weight to that final battle, then what's our stake? What are the stakes? Why do we care when we watch it? Which is, I don't want you to hate me when I say this, but that's one of my problems with a lot of the Marvel films, is when I watch them, I'm just like, I get to the points and I'm like, but I don't care. I just like, you have me and then you lose me, because, and I said this, and people will hate me now, but in Civil War, that last fight with the three-way fight, Bucky, Cap, and Iron Man, I'm not a huge fan of that fight, because I felt the weight was forced in that fight. I never truly believed it. And I feel like, what are you going to do with Rey and Kylo to keep them going in 9? Because there's I didn't really care in 7 for their fight was great, but the emotional weight wasn't there, and it doesn't need to be there yet.
Right.
Now you have that fight, but they're together essentially. So what are they in 9, and what is the weight in 9? And is it this connection, and the way this connection grows, is that going to be the weight that is carried on Rey and Kylo? I think that is a fascinating outlook, because it changes. It's not blood relatives. It's another type of connective tissue for them.
Right. And just to touch on a couple of things you said there. So you were talking about how you didn't really see it in The Force Awakens. So I don't. It's funny, because I didn't necessarily see it in The Force Awakens either. But what's funny, going back to that Ellen interview that I just referenced, not Adam Driver, Oscar Isaacs. Isaac literally talks about how it's a subtle love story. He's like, he essentially almost says, it's a love story. It's just a subtle love story, something that you won't maybe catch the first time. And it was the third Vincent Vendetta video, which he almost didn't even do. I don't really know the backstory on that, but I think that something was going on. He just probably hated what YouTube was doing. I shouldn't even say that. No, this video's not getting views now. No.
Oh yeah, say that on my channel.
But in all seriousness, so his last video, he was talking about this trope that's in a lot of mythic storytelling and like old storytelling, and this is the maiden, the monster and the maiden. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh man,
we did a Reylo video right before The Last Jedi. I think it was a week The Last Jedi came out. We did the Reylo video a day or two before, and you mentioned it. And since then, I've been watching a lot of videos, reading up a lot on it, and totally.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm blanking on what the trope is called. It's something in the Maiden, Shadow in the Maiden, Monster in the Maiden, something like that. But anyways, the idea here is that there are certain things that happen in these movies or these stories which involve this trope. And one of the things is literally like the monster sweeps the female off of her feet and then like takes the female back to their lair. And they also watch the female sleep. Like if you notice in Beauty and the Beast, this sort of happens. There's other examples like the Phantom of the Opera, where essentially what happens is this beast or this monster sort of finds this love to the maiden. And the thing that's interesting is the way that they describe this trope. The reason it's really interesting is because it's almost an unsettling love, which is something that we talked about in the video on my channel yesterday, which was just the weirdness of the love connection itself. But the thing about Star Wars is that it's not straightforward storytelling. It's really mythic. And so it's really telling you about themes within the human spirit, ideas and principles that apply to your own personal journey. It's almost like a soap opera, right? It's not like, oh, I can relate to this person and literally know what it's like to be them. So it's a really, really interesting thing, but there's a lot of evidence to support that this happened. Now, I didn't personally see it in The Force Awakens either, but remember, like we were doing all those live streams, right? Breaking down all the theories. The only one that I really got into was the Reylo one. And what's kind of funny is, so we did that live stream, the worst live stream of all time.
Yes.
Our Reylo one. And that forced me to do the Reylo Explained video the next day, which blew up and all that. So I did that video just kind of bringing in all these ideas. And I'm like, oh, man, this is so crazy. And as I'm watching The Last Jedi, the very moment where they have their first Force Bond connection, it all clicked for me, where I was like, oh, wow, like all this evidence is real. It really did happen. They're really doing it. And like you said, what else could fuel the drama in 9 better than the fact that they care about each other? Because otherwise, if they don't have that connection and you're Kylo Ren, you're just going to cut her down. I mean, it says in the novelization that Kylo of The Force Awakens, that Kylo could have cut Rey down at any moment on Starkiller Base, but he doesn't. He doesn't want to kill her. He wants to turn her. He wants to bring her to his side. And I think that's very interesting. It also sort of relates to the Bastila Revan connection from the Knights of the Old Republic, which was a very similar type thing, with the love being this thing between them, having that Force connection. And I think it was Kreia says in the Old Republic that the Force bond between an apprentice and a Jedi is this thing that was never fully explored, because the Jedi were against attachment, so they would allow that connection to foster, but only to a point, right? And so if they didn't have those sort of dogmatic rules that were breaking down connection, that the Force bond could have been a just crazy, crazy intimate connection that people have. So I don't know, man. I definitely think it's real, and I think it's going to play out in 9 for sure.
Unless, of course, they are brother and sister.
Yeah, well, there's zero chance. There's zero chance of that, and I'm sorry. Like, I think there was probably zero chance of that going into it anyways. But what's funny is this. So George had this idea, right? When you think about what George wanted for the movie, his idea was what's happening with the grandchildren of Darth Vader. And so his idea was that, like, if he was writing the movies, Rey and Kylo would be brother and sister or cousins, right? But Disney decided, no, they don't want to do that. They want to change that dynamic and have one not be a Skywalker and one be a Skywalker. And then you have, like, the romance thing, which is like, mythic storytelling, perennial storytelling, going back to all of that. So they sort of decided to take George's original idea and make it into a love story, which, by the way, that was the Luke and Leia connection originally. When George first wrote the movie, and when he was first making the movie, it was going to be Luke and Leia as a couple. And you can see that reflected in The Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which was the novel that took place 2 years afterwards.
They do sleep together in a cave.
Yep. So you can see that was sort of the way he was going with it. Now, he sort of pulled back on that and decided to go the route of the twins, which is, an interesting thing. But, like, it's almost like now we're getting the more real version of that George was going to do. You know what I mean? It's interesting.
Yeah, it's, they took, I think what they did was they took his notes, stripped some of it off, and went back to, because one thing, nobody gives Disney credit for doing this. The new Lucasfilm regime doing this, except for Filoni. Filoni, for some reason, everybody, like, praises him for it. But it's been more than Filoni. They have been respecting the Ralph McQuarrie artwork that he did, the sketches, all of that stuff. They have been respecting that so much, and nobody seems to give a crap when it comes to the new saga. But for some reason, you put it in Rogue One, you put it in Rebels, and everybody's like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
because everybody just wants to hate the sequel trilogy. I think that's part of the problem. But
Yeah.
they have been so respectful of that, and so I think you're right. I think they looked at it and they said, okay, this is the dynamic that Georgie Boy wants.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily want to retread this. Let's do a modern take on it. Blah 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 blah. And then they looked back at what they had, what Lucas had in his original notes for his original Star Wars, The Adventures of Mace Windu, Star Killer, Luke Skywalker, blah blah.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, that we could take that, and they started piecing it together, and they created something new from old ideas."
I think you're 100% right, and you're right. A lot of people don't give them credit for that. That team, and this is something that, like, I think it's awesome that you and I get to talk about this and sort of promote this idea out there. But like, if you just look at the art books, guys, it's so obvious. You got a ton of people that are really passionate about Star Wars. They really care about Star Wars, and even The Last Jedi, like divisive as it was, Ryan loves Star Wars, but he knew he had to do things differently. Like, you can't just have the same Star Wars. Even though what's really weird is, in a lot of ways, The Last Jedi is the same old Star Wars. It's the same old ideas. It's the same old themes. You got your old Jedi character that's isolated himself. You know, you've got a lot of the same beats. So it is kind of interesting that all happens. But going back to like the Reylo idea in 9, do you think that they're going to have Force Bond connection moments again? Or do you think that that's over, like Brock said?
I think that's a great question, because I honestly, I think it comes down to Abrams, to JJ, and what he wants to do with them. I think that's where it is. I think it would be foolish not to, because we saw one at the end of The Last Jedi, so we know that it will continue. I don't think we need as many as we did in The Last Jedi.
Right.
But there could be a really cool, powerful moment in the movie that is a Force connection, like it was. And I think it would be, I think, just weird not to continue it because of that last one in the movie after Snoke has passed. Unless, of course, Snoke is alive. But I know. Seriously.
Make this the thumbnail.
You got it. No, I mean, no, I think Snoke's dead. But you know what I mean? Like, if Snoke is still alive, then the connections would make sense. If he's dead, how did that last one come to be? And why wouldn't you continue that?
Yeah. I think you need to continue them.
Oh yeah.
I think you have to.
Oh, why would you have to, Josh?
Well, because look, otherwise, if they don't have those connections, we know that there's probably going to be a time jump, right? And if they don't have those connections, then they've been separated for so long. Like, long distance relationships usually don't work like in real life. And the reason is because you need those moments. You need to see each other. You need to have some intimacy. You need those. They're very important to foster a relationship. And so if Reylo's endgame, and if the love and the romantic feelings that they have for each other is going to play a part in this whole thing, like I think it will, like literally Kylo will have no reason to stop. I think that he will be just a force of nature, and he will have taken over, and he will just be crushing every enemy that he has, including the Resistance. And I truly believe that the love that he has for Rey might be the only thing that could save him, because I don't think Rey's going to be able to just beat him in battle. I just don't. And I think they could maybe destroy each other, but I think that, like, in order to have that connection, like, what's going to have to happen is they're going to have these moments. Like, I can see scenarios where Kylo is doing his thing. You know, he's training the Knights of Ren, and then all of a sudden he sees Rey, and she's just watching him, and they start to kind of garner this sort of admiration for each other, because it's really private. It's really personal. Like, those moments in the throne room, nobody else knows how that went down. I mean, we do as an audience, but nobody in the universe knows that. They saved each other's lives. They fought side by side. You know what I mean? Like, they arguably defeated a very vile villain. Like, they've conquered. They've done a good and maybe arguably bad thing. And so I think you need to continue to have those moments. Otherwise, it will be unrealistic at the end when they lay down their arms because of the feelings they have for each other.
Yeah, I got to bring up a message from Ian McLean sent, because you mentioned before we went on, where you mentioned how she closes the door on Kylo.
Yep.
And then a lot of people are like, done, over, moving on. Ian says from that point that everybody believes that the scene at the end was the end of it. I believe the scene Rey closes the door is them realizing they're still connected, and Rey is truly the only person Ben has left. All family dead, and Rey's the only person he has left. I believe Rey and Kylo will end up together in 9. After Hux discovers he kills Snoke, and Kylo is on the run and finds Rey, Ben will sacrifice himself for Rey, and Rey will go ape poop and take down what's left of the First Order. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's cool, but I just don't think that's the way it's going to go down. Because I think the ultimate sacrifice, the only thing that will redeem Kylo in any way, and make no mistake about it, it is about redemption. He will have to be in a position where essentially nothing can stop him, and then he chooses not to crush all of the hope that's left in the galaxy. So, like, I think the scenario is him winning, doing his thing, being crazier than Darth Vader, crazier than the Emperor, being horrible, but having order. Like, he's winning, he's succeeding, he's making all the moves on the chessboard. He has the game essentially won, and Rey will essentially get him to realize that all like the worldly things, which by the way, I have a video coming out about how she'll be able to redeem him, where I sort of go like kind of in depth about it, break down the points. That should be coming out in the next couple of days on the Den of Nerds. Shameless plug. But
you need it.
Thank you. The idea here is that she will have to appeal not only to his feelings, but to like his understanding of the Force. Like, she's gonna have to get him to realize, like, look, this isn't about us. This isn't about the galaxy. Something's happening with the Force. You and I are connected for a reason. We need to go fix this. Let this go. Because what keeps happening in Star Wars, the light rises, then the darkness rises. The light rises, and the darkness rises. Everything's swinging. It's like this pendulum swinging. And I think Kylo will realize that what he is doing is not even going to serve the purpose that he really feels like in his heart. And that the belonging that he seeks, everything that he's been trying to do, like the legacy, all those things, they're tied to her, not to conquering the galaxy. And so I think that ultimately that has to be the thing, because the lesson in the story, like it's a lesson to like to everybody, but like think about like the ruthless businessman, the ruthless capitalist. This is a story to tell that person that oblivion will leave you completely alone. Oblivion, the path to oblivion, the path to the success you seek, the path to what you're trying to do will decimate it. It's like, who wants to be king of the ashes? You know what I mean? And so I think that that's essentially the lesson that they're trying to instill, is that no, like, connection, love, these things matter, right? There's a lot of interesting things going on with Kylo. Like, I talked a little bit about like integrating the shadow, and like Carl Jung and the idea of embracing the dark side. Like, you have to embrace your dark side, because if you don't, like, what happens is you become sort of resentful. Like, have you ever been at a party and like you act a certain way to sort of like appease the people at the party? Like and then like they either dig on you, or later on at night you're like, you know what? I don't even feel that way really. Why did I go along with that at the party? Well, Jung would say the reason is because you were acting as the persona. You were not integrating your shadow. You weren't acting like a true person. So there's not a firmness to you. And Kylo's whole thing is looking for identity, man. You know, he's trying to like figure out who he is. So yeah, I not to go crazy off topic, but like that's sort of where my thoughts are with it. What he's describing as Kylo losing and going on the run is not mythic storytelling. It doesn't have any redeeming qualities.
I'm going to tell you how 9 is going to end right now. So
excited.
if you don't want to know, pause the video, fast forward a little bit, because I have the inside scoop. What's going to happen is Kylo is going to be Supreme Leader Kylo, like you said, through the entire galaxy. Everybody will look up at him and be like, "Oh, that's the Supreme Leader, Mr. Kylo Ren," and he's going to do a phenomenal job. And everyone's going to say he is the best thing to happen to this galaxy. You know, our economy is growing. The whole world, the whole galaxy economy is growing. He's just fantastic. And Rey's going to say, "Wow, I could have been there with him through this all." And she's going to go. And Kylo, doing this great job, is actually really depressed. And he's having a nervous breakdown because he needs someone by his side. And Rey will be, "I will be your guiding light." And they will rule the galaxy together as husband and wife.
Hmm.
And then in 10, a threat from the unknown regions is going to come in, and then we're going to have a whole new trilogy, and that is how it is.
I would really like that. Honestly, I would really like something coming in and being a big threat and they having to work together. I would really like that idea. The problem is, I think it diminishes the arc. It diminishes their character arc because A, Rey doesn't get the triumph of actually turning him. B, Kylo doesn't make the choice on his own to turn. He's like sort of forced to that's like a Dragon Ball trope, like the anti-heroes having to work together because of a greater threat, which kind of happened in 8 anyway. But the idea here is like that's not really the arc of Star Wars. That's not something, you know what I mean? So like I would love that. Don't get me wrong, like, and honestly, if they don't want to go with the Star Wars idea and they want to go with that, I'd still be down. But I just don't think that's what Disney's trying to do. That's not what Lucasfilm wants to do. It's not what George would have done. It's just not really it.
No, I don't think that's going to happen at all whatsoever. I cannot wait to see what happens. You and I did a video on your channel yesterday. This obviously is Thursday. We wear the same clothes 2 days in a row. That's what we do. So do you want to tell everybody about, you got something cool going on? Because we're done talking about this, just so you know. Do you want to tell everybody what's going on your channel? You got some cool news coming up.
Oh, yeah. So I'm starting a new show, that's going to take place 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, at noon Eastern Standard Time. It's called the Nerdy News Rundown. It's very similar to the show we used to have called the Nerdy News Hour. And so this show is going to be out of a comic shop here in Philadelphia, and we're going to be doing the show live every day at noon. The first week won't be live, but then after that, it's live every day. We're going to be doing a couple topics each day, breaking down the news of nerdy things, Star Wars news if it's popping. And then after that, I address sort of questions. So you can use like super chats when you're watching the stream, or just submit questions to us on social media. And we'll spend every day sort of going over a few questions. But it's going to be cool. There's going to be some giveaways. It's sponsored by the comic shop. It's a really, really nice like set. I've been working hard on it. It's going to have a really cool little like vlog type intro. So, if you kind of like some of the things that come out of my mouth parts, maybe you'll like the show. So appreciate you letting me plug that. But yeah, go over and subscribe to the Den of Nerds.
Yeah, check that out. I will be away next week, but when I get back, I'm going to catch up and watch them all. So I'm going to get 10 the first week. And I'll be so tired of you.
Yep, you will.
Yeah, that's going to be on. I'm actually really looking forward to that show. For me, guys, I have a new movie channel, Digital Charcuterie. Check that out. Subscribe to it. It's young. It's new. We don't do a weekly show live at 12 p.m. every day. We do it at 12:05 every day. And we do it at 11:59, and we talk about all of the...
You know what you should do? Do a show literally a couple minutes after mine, and then just talk shit on everything I say. Talk crap on everything I say. So you could be watching the show and being like, I can't believe he's saying this. That's super wrong.
I'll just do it the same. I'll do a live commentary of me watching. Yeah. Nope, absolutely not. Bull crap. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching, and may the force of others be with you.
8 out of 10 times, we're still going on it.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.